Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Intermission podcast. We're so glad that you joined us. We created this program to provide support and education for our community. And just as a reminder, Will Rogers Foundation, we provide financial assistance and supportive counseling to people who work in movie theaters across the United States, and people who work in distribution of feature films, and IATSE members who also work in film or live theater. Today I'm joined with Travis Shakespeare. He is an award-winning producer and director. And he also directed, I think it's your last documentary, Playing with Fire, about the financial freedom movement. Thanks for joining us again.
Good to see you, Sam.
Yeah, nice to see you too. So today I thought we would kind of go back to the basics, go to a foundational piece about financial freedom or financial wellness, really, which is knowing how much you need each month to get by.
Yeah, which is a really important piece that a lot of people overlook. It seems really obvious at first. You're like, oh, well, I know how much I'm spending. But then when you actually put pen to paper, which is an exercise that I hope everybody watching will do after today, it ends up informing you in a way that's kind of surprising sometimes.
Right. Yeah. And we did want to say, that's really our goal for this podcast. The goal is that everyone either does it while they're sitting here with us, writes down all their basics, and we'll go over that, or they have a plan to go away and do that at some point so that they know how much they need each month, because it's super important. And I guess we could go into talking about why it's important. I know we came up with several really good ones.
Well, I think the big thing is that knowledge is power, right? So that's number one. If you don't know exactly how much money you're spending every month, you don't know how much you need to earn every month just to get by.
It's such a good point. I'm really glad that you said that. Yeah.
And it's if you're living in a mystery of money, that's where things get even more stressful. I mean, money can be very stressful anyway.
Absolutely.
Just because, some of us are living day to day, whatever. But when you also add on to that you don't know how much money you need for your basic needs, it can get even sketchier for us. So part of this is just for us to try to help take some of the stress away from personal finance. And this is, I think, is the first big step.
I think so too. And you kind of touched on something that I'm super passionate about, which is the nervous system, because if you don't know what you need each month, there is a sense that you're living a little bit in that fight or flight mode of survival. I'm just going to get up, I'm going to pay whatever bill I can pay and hope tomorrow I have enough for the next one, right? Which in these times is really common. So it can help us to reduce stress, just knowing how much we need. So I just wanted to throw that in there, because I think I don't think we give that enough credence of how much our financial situations weigh on us and make us, feel stress, whether it's in your face kind of stress or low grade, running in the background kind of stress.
Well, money is the number one cause of divorce in America.
Right, exactly.
And why? A lot of it's just because people don't feel comfortable talking about it or sitting down with their spouse and going through and making a plan. So I think knowledge is power. And the other thing is that by knowing how much you need, you can begin to set goals to improve your situation and improve your ability to cope.
Yeah. Which is so important, because when we can slow down enough to think ahead, we've taken ourselves out of survival mode and we've said, okay, my future matters to me, and here is how I'm preparing for my future. So yeah, we want to give people really little bite-sized things that they can do, because money can be very overwhelming. And the thought of it, I know I've counseled a lot of people who even having the conversation is difficult. But what I have noticed 9 times out of 10, when we finish a budget review with somebody, or we go over their debt or whatever, they feel relieved. Even if they owe a lot, they feel okay, I understand what I have to do. So yeah, I think that's
because they know.
Yeah. Right? Because they know. I know sometimes it's so simple. So let's talk about why it's important to have this amount. I'm sure there's like a lot of things people will already think about, like a sudden illness, that might make it difficult for you.
You're talking about for budgeting purposes, like what can like throw our budget off course?
Right. Well, like why know this basic number? Why is it important? Because I think sometimes we just hear this stuff and we don't like really think it through. Like, why do I need to know? That's the question. Why do I need to know how much I need each month? Like,
Well, again, if you don't know how much you need each month, then you don't know how much you have to work. You don't know how much of a raise to ask for if you're in that point in your career. You don't know what's going to throw you off, right? And there's so many things that can throw us off, like getting laid off
right.
or fired, you know, or we're in the middle of a strike right now in Hollywood, you know, 2 strikes. I think the writers have settled, right? But SAG-AFTRA is still.
Right. Writers have settled, but the SAG is keeping, that's.
Yeah, so like
Is able to work yet, so.
I work with some people, like I have a woman that I work with, she's a set painter. She's been out of work for months now, you know?
Right,
So it's really stressful. And we don't know when these things are gonna just crop up. Your car craps out, whatever. So you don't understand how to budget for daily needs or emergencies.
right.
Which is where the emergencies is where things really go off course.
For sure. Yeah. So like, illness or accident. And then one of the things I wanted to mention here was like, if you live, there's 5 states that give us state disability. So that means if I break my leg in California and I need to take 2 weeks off work, I can apply for state disability. But if I live in like the states are California, Hawaii, New York, New Jersey, or Rhode Island, those have state disability. But let's say I live in Alabama or I don't know, Ohio or any of the other states, then if my company doesn't have disability, I'm out of an income until I can get back to work. So I think that's another factor we don't think about. We definitely heard that scenario here is somebody will call, an employee will call and they'll say, I had an accident and I can't work and I'm out 2 weeks and now I can't pay my rent. So.
Yeah, I think also people often find like they have a family member who's suddenly out of sorts, you know, or an elderly parent who needs extra support. My mom recently just had to get dentures and she couldn't afford it because it was really expensive.
It's very.
So I had to suddenly chip in, which I was happy to do, but like that wasn't planned for. So understanding what our planned expenses are is going to empower us for when the unplanned expenses due to these kinds of factors come along.
That makes sense. So should we identify like basic needs? Should we talk about like what is in that number of?
Sure. So this is sort of like budgeting 101, right? Like how do we budget our lives and how do we figure out how to create financial well-being for ourselves? So we look at needs, wants, and then savings. Savings could include retirement, investments, things like that. But the first part is the needs that we have, that we all have every month. So things like where we live. So that would be our mortgage or our rent, right? How do we get to work? Transportation costs. Do I have a car? Do I have a car payment? Do I have monthly subway, costs? That kind of thing. If you have a car, you have to also account for repairs, new tires that come up, brakes, things like that. So that has to get included and baked into the needs part of the budget.
Probably car insurance then, if we're talking
car insurance,
car insurance and gasoline. Or
yes, and if you have a family, oftentimes life insurance goes along with that. Obviously, for most of us, health insurance, some of us get that through our employers. Some of us we pay a portion, so that has to be included.
Yeah, and I think I want to make a plug for health insurance being a basic need because we definitely hear from folks who have opted out of the health insurance because it gets taken out of their paycheck and they need that to really get by. And I totally understand why people do it. And also in our country, the healthcare is so expensive. we don't know when we're going to get sick or have an accident. So those can really be devastating financially.
Yeah.
To not have it. So I can understand why people don't include it as a basic need, because that happened. We see it all the time. But just wanted to throw that in there too.
No, it's true. It's a kind of Russian roulette. You just never really quite know. When you're young and healthy, it's easy to just kind of be like, well, I'm still young and healthy, whatever. But, accidents do happen, and people can get into situations. So it is generally considered to be something that you should include in your needs.
In your needs category.
Yeah, as well. Food,
definitely.
which has gotten more and more expensive as inflation's been rising, as we all probably have noticed.
Yeah.
So generally speaking, when you're doing your needs budget, you can probably keep dining out of that budget, unless dining out is like part of your regular thing. Like if you have 2 jobs and you're going through the drive-through for breakfast, lunch, and dinner,
okay,
just to keep up with your life, then you need to budget it that way. But most of us will just kind of put groceries or basic food needs in there, with maybe a little bit of, I don't know, drive-through or whatever. I'm not talking about going out for Valentine's Day. That would go into a separate category, which is in your wants category.
Right. Yeah, we usually say we keep the restaurants separate, because sometimes it's really helpful to look at, even if you have 2 jobs and that's how you're making it work, I don't want anyone to feel like they're doing anything wrong. And you can look at it, if you do separate the number out, you can see sometimes how much that you're spending there. But with food, what we've noticed is, like, for a single person, we give them $500, but a lot of people that come to us, they're not spending that much. But I also, that is the one category where, when we ask people to add it up, like go back through bank statements, they're always surprised. They're always surprised how much they're spending. Because I don't think we understand how many times maybe you stop and pick something up 2 or 3 times a month outside of,
Yeah, or you just you're getting gas and you grab a thing of Cheetos and a water.
Right.
And you're like, oh, it's not a big deal, but it's actually $4 because it's at the gas station,
Right.
And
exactly.
you don't realize it does add up really fast. So I think $500 for a single person for food in most places is probably doable. I think in expensive states like Southern California or like New York City or something like that, that could be a little difficult, probably a little bit more. I think it's worth, as you said, like writing all these down. Like if you're not already writing these down, put it on paper. And if you have a chance to go through your food expenditure for, like, say, like the past month, it's a wonderful exercise just to get a grip on like what your basic need actually is. Because you'll be able to go through and be like, well, I really didn't need this. I didn't need that, blah, blah. But I did need, my eggs, my rice, my beans, my vegetables, my apples. You'll know that you needed those just to get through the month.
Yeah, I think that's the common theme that I'm hearing so far in our conversation, is that you will be surprised. I think most people are surprised about how much they spend. I think food is definitely one of those categories where, I think for myself, I notice I'm spending more each week because of the increase in food. But it took me about a month or so to realize, like, oh, that's more than I've been spending. So I had to kind of go back and adjust my budget a little bit.
Yeah. Me too. During this inflationary period, I've definitely seen a bump as well.
Yeah. So, okay. So we've kind of outlined, I think, are those most of the basic needs? I think we hit most of them.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, this is just like pen and paper math. This isn't like high tech, really. You could literally just,
not algebra.
Yeah, exactly. You could just write down like each line item and add it up. And we thought about doing an example of somebody who maybe needs about, I think I said 1,800 to live. That's their basic needs. So, if we add up somebody's rent and food and medical and transportation.
Insurance. Yeah. You know, the other thing that we didn't put in medical is there are certain things that some people need, like some people need prescriptions every month, you know?
That's true.
And then there's also other little medical things that we don't really think about, like, you know, Band-Aids and personal care items like lotion,
Yeah.
you
Or
know,
going to the dentist twice a year. We're supposed to go twice a year to get a checkup and
exactly.
right. So you're right. That's true. That should be in basic needs.
I think so. I think that you can kind of, that's not going to go into your monthly basic needs, but if you did like an annual, like, okay, I go to the dentist once or twice a year.
Right.
You know, I spend this much money on, you know, there's also like paper goods, like toilet paper, and these have gotten super expensive now too, paper towels. I usually throw all that into my grocery budget.
I do too.
Put lotions and all that kind of thing like in there, but don't forget to take that into consideration because paper towels add up. You know, like a giant thing at Target is what, $20 now or something,
Right.
like
Right.
6 paper towels. So it's kind of crazy, but yeah.
Yeah. So just on that theme as well, if you wear glasses or contacts, that you would want to make sure that's in your budget as well of what you need. Now, you're just like you said, you're not going to need a monthly, but sometimes what helps me to do is I'll add up how much I need. Like, let's say my glasses and they're going to cost X amount of dollars and I would divide it by 12. And that helps me just to see I need, you know, $50 a month for glasses, even though I'm paying it in a lump sum, because we do that with like car insurance, you pay it in a lump sum, but you're really wanting to know how much you're going to need each month. So I don't know if that is helpful for some people. That's how I do it.
Yeah, I think that that works. And not to get depressing, but I forgot about taxes, which we all have to pay as well. And depending on our income, sometimes we don't have enough taken out of our paycheck. So we end up with a tax bill at the end of the year. So you can look at your tax bill from a previous year and kind of bake that into your needs as well, unless your income's going up substantially and it's harder. Well, then you have good problems. But but you can kind of guess like if you're going to have a tax bill as well.
Okay, that's smart. Okay, so we've added all that up and we've got our number and we know why the number is good to have in case of an emergency, in case you know you're going to lose a portion of your income or your hours are going to get cut or whatever that you need. Let's just go with 1,800. Let's just say that is our, let's say, so that means if I were to go into some kind of like some crisis or some kind of big, or even like one time I had all 4 tires. I literally blew out a tire, went to the station and they were like, you know, you need 4 tires, which is expensive. So, you know, it kind of threw me off for that month. But like,
yeah, what is that, $1,200 or $1,500 depending on
a lot. Yeah, I can't remember what it was. This is a while back, but it was like one of those just like, oh my gosh, like how am I gonna, you know, now I have to like adjust. But it helps us to know, like, okay, if I know I need 1,800, now I know I need an extra 1,000 on top of that. And you know, let's say income is about 2,200 a month. Like for, you know, that kind of like 1,800 is my basic needs. Let's say I'm earning 2,200. It doesn't matter. We just want to show you like, that means you have, what is that? $400 to work
300.
with. Is it 300?
Oh, it's 400. Yeah. 18 to 21. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have $400 to work with. So then that helps us go to like the next step, which is what can I do with that 400? And, you know, that's where we got into that conversation of like needs, wants,
and savings.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's exactly it. So once you know what your monthly nut is, that's your needs. Then whatever you earn in surplus to that is the money that you have to basically play with. That can become a number of different things. It's interesting that you brought up the tires because what's not baked into your needs budget are emergency things. Now, tires aren't really an emergency, but it's something that creeps up. New brakes, new tires. What if you get pregnant, right? Like all of a sudden, you got another mouth to feed. You know, those are the things that come up in our lives that planned or unplanned can really derail our financial goals. So the money that we have after our needs is the pot of money that we use for our wants and for our investments.
Mhm.
Investments could be an emergency fund, which would pay for tires or an emergency medical need or something. Like, what happens with the people that you work with? What are some of the things that happen that come regularly where they suddenly are just blown out and they need
Yeah.
help?
Dental.
Oh,
That is a big one. That is a big one. I mean, if you have to have a root canal, depending on where you live, right? Like it's going to vary, but it can be as much as $2,000,
wow.
right? So, because you have to get the crown, you have to get the root canal done. Our dental insurance, like sometimes dental insurance covers a small portion, which is helpful, but it's not like regular medical insurance, you know? So
Mhm.
I think dental would be a big one. And then the other big thing that happens with folks is that they work someplace where they don't have paid time off. And so let's say there's some, even a minor incident or like major, like a cancer occurrence or some kind of illness where they're going to need treatment for a little while and they cannot work as much. So then all of a sudden their income, it isn't there unless they have, like what we talked about at the beginning, some companies offer disability insurance. And that would be something I would encourage everyone to find out, is if that's in your benefits package with the company you work with. Some companies do it, and it's usually about 60% of your income, which a
You
lot
mean
of
the payout?
the payout. Yep. For the state of California, it's the same. So it's really important that people hear that, because you just think, oh, disability's there for me. Yes, it is, but at 60% of your paycheck. So that means you've lost 40% of your income just out the gate. And if you're living paycheck to paycheck, which 75% of Americans do, that's 75% of all wages, all wage earners, like the total population,
Wow.
live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I would say those are the two big ones, like dental, and then a surprise, like I'm out of work for, even if you miss a few days and you're living pretty tight, that's going to be hard.
So it goes back to what you were saying about medical insurance, which like that's the one thing that can really blow you out, and like it's hard. And medical insurance is expensive in this country. So definitely something to think about. I think if you're living paycheck to paycheck, that can be very, very difficult. But if you're earning an okay wage where you're getting by, it's definitely something to think about adding in.
I think so too. Yeah. Yeah.
So to go back to the sort of basic model, so we have our needs and then we have our wants, which we also include investments in that. Once you have, we call it wants generally, but let's say it's your surplus cash. So in your example, if you're earning $2,100 a month, your needs take up $1,800. That gives you $400 a month left over to pay for what? Root canals,
Right.
tires. What if you have outstanding debt, like credit card debt, or maybe your student loan debt would probably be in with your needs, but like consumer debt, I want to say like your Macy's card or.
Well, the example you gave of your mom, like
Yeah.
a family member that you really want to help, and you're going to take on that load, even if you put it on your credit card, which a lot of people put medical debt or medical bills on their credit cards, knowing like, I can't pay this right now, so I'm going to pay it off over time. We're going to do a whole session, the next one, on debt. So we'll get into some of that there, but yeah, I think those scenarios come up. So that's what you were saying, is like, there's that $300 or $400 left over at the end of the month
to pay for extras.
Whatever they are. And we're not talking about, like, we haven't put restaurants in that, eating out, any kind of entertainment, any kind
that's where this pool of money would pay for that kind of stuff.
Right.
Movies, Netflix subscriptions, eating out, getting your nails done, getting your hair done.
Vacations would go there, right?
Vacations, work clothes. You can put, if you're a nurse, you can put your scrubs inside your needs category, but most of us don't need a uniform for work.
Right.
We think we do, we're like, oh, I really need new clothes for work,
Right.
guilty of that too. but it's really a want. It's really not a need.
Right.
So, all of those things are going to have to come out of that extra pool of money. Then, in addition to that, is going to be providing for your future, which would be things like your retirement account, your 401k, and so on and so forth, which is another conversation. But
Right.
that's where that pool of money is actually deployed.
Mhm.
I would say that if you earn more money than you need, the number one thing that you want to think about doing is creating some kind of an emergency fund,
Okay.
which is going to pay for mom's dentures, your tires,
Mhm.
God forbid, some other medical problem, or, I don't know, somebody breaks your window, like a neighborhood kid throws a ball through your window and you have to like,
There's so many life things that
just
happen.
life things like, and if you don't have a little bit of money set aside to cover that, again, it's going to derail you.
Mhm.
And I think the essence of financial well-being is that you're in a situation where you create a kind of resilience for yourself, where you're able to pivot, you're able to kind of go with what's coming at you.
Mhm.
It's kind of like working out, like if you have no balance and no musculature, and like somebody throws a ball your way, you're going to fall over trying to catch it. What you want to try to do is create a kind of stability for yourself in your life. And I think the emergency fund is probably, after understanding what your monthly expenditures are, the most important thing. And, emergency fund can be as little as like, a couple $100 just in case, or it can be as much as going for a larger goal, like 3 months worth of expenses in case you get thrown out of the workforce for a couple of months.
Right.
That's there to provide a cushion for you.
Right. And I think going back to like that basic need number, let's say your goal is to have an emergency fund. I know once I started to have an emergency fund, the stress I was feeling, it really did decrease. It was incredible. I mean, my relationship with money growing up was tricky. I think a lot of people. So like, I think I had this like, just unawareness around money. And then once I started to put money away, I was able to, it just helped me to understand like, oh, this is how I'll plan for the future now. Right.
Yeah.
So even if you're living pretty close paycheck to paycheck, finding some room in there. And I think you had some really good things to say about that. Like, I know we can't squeeze, I can't remember the analogy you gave me, but you can't like, if all your basic needs are taking all your paycheck, there's no room in there for savings. But that needs also need to be known. Just like, I think it's really important that people just know it. Like, you cannot plan for your future with this amount of money that you're earning.
Exactly. If you just bury your head in the sand and just hope for the best, probably things are not going to get better. In order to have any kind of control, you have to understand what you're dealing with,
Yeah. And all I would like, the therapist in me would like to add to that is like, if you're burying your head in the sand, it is a clue that there's some kind of either trauma or not able to cope with what's going on. Because that's what we do. That's what we do when we're overwhelmed, is we're like, nope, I'm not going to think about it. And the amount of people who have come in and we've gone through their budget, and sometimes we really take our time with folks because we want them to, have that feeling. And a lot of them get it, where they're like, I never knew. And it's empowering,
Yeah, it is. And it can take practice. I mean, for some of us, I mean, I'm like that. I was never really very financially savvy at all. It took me until much later in life to start to grapple with this because of a crisis that I had in my own life, where I realized that I was not doing well at all. I had to figure it out. And I had my head in the sand in a certain way. But once I started taking a look at the stuff and practicing every month, writing down, what do I actually need this month? What did I spend last month? Do I have any excess money here? And if I do, how am I choosing to use it? Am I blowing it all on nights out at the bowling alley? Or am I thinking about maybe creating an emergency fund or other ways to make myself more stronger,
Yeah, I like the word you use, resiliency, because I'm sure some people have said that, financial resiliency, but I can see how the emergency fund gives that to us, because it is that ability to say, okay, I need these tires. I'm really glad I have this money put aside. I'm going to put this here. I don't have to put it on my credit card. I don't have to, accrue interest and all of that, which we will go into next time, because once you see some numbers, it really, it helps to make the change, which is why we're doing this, because we want people to feel like they have some control.
Yes.
There's
And just for like a takeaway, a good rule of thumb, if you are making more money than you spend every month, is to try to save 10% of your take-home pay. So in our example, with $2,100 coming in, if you could save $210 per month, that's going to be difficult with only $400 extra, but it's a goal for somebody who's making more money. If you're making $3,000 a month and you have the same $1,800 needs, you have $1,200 a month to play with. Well, then saving $300 gets easier. So as you begin to make more money throughout your career, this gets easier and easier as it goes. But saving 10%, we call it paying yourself first.
Yeah, I love that.
You go out, you grind it out, you work hard for yourself, for your family and whatever. And so much of the time, because we're not paying attention to where our money's going, everybody else gets it. The McDonald's Corporation, Chevron, everybody else gets your money, and you end up empty-handed. But if you do the pay yourself 10% first rule, then you're walking away with some kind of gold from the effort that you put out in life.
Yeah, I love that. We actually added that as a line item on our budget. It's called pay yourself savings, emergency savings.
Great.
Because it's just, if it's not in your, if you weren't, let's say it this way, if you were not trained as a child, or you weren't in a healthy financial situation, or watching financial health, and it doesn't matter if your family made a lot of money or very little. Financial health is really like, what's the relationship? Am I saving? Are we doing things in a kind of pragmatic way? I don't know, but I think that is an important piece, is like, you can learn this at any age. You can learn these things that will help you have more resilience.
Definitely. And if you've been really struggling up to this point, all is not lost. There really is hope here.
Oh, absolutely.
I promise you. I know it firsthand. Yeah. This could be worked through.
That's great. We're out of time, and that's a great place to end, because I always like to end on a hopeful feeling, because it matters. Like we can empower ourselves. We can learn. We can learn new skills at any age, at any point in our career, wherever we are. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Travis, for joining us. Thank you all for tuning in. You can watch past episodes on our YouTube channel. We also have them up on our website. Travis gave us 2 webinars last year on different subjects, and you can go back and watch them. And then just keep an eye out. We're going to be talking about credit and debt calculators next time, which I love. I think those are so helpful. So thank you so much, Travis. Appreciate you.